Good afternoon and welcome to Dr. Vee's Coaching Corner. I'm your co-host, or together with Dr. Veronica De La Rosa, I'm your co-host, Allan Wazny, and Dr. Veronica, or Dr. Vee. This is episode number 3. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here for episode number 3.
You know, this is the coaching corner, but you've been coaching me, for the benefit of our few listeners out there, you've been coaching me the last few weeks, so I appreciate that. So I'm going to give you a coaching tip now. You should have a Christmas tree behind you, not a plant.
Not a plant, right? I have it looks like low-hanging fruit in there. So yes, I will change it.
So what are we talking? We've talked a lot about self-confidence, and I think you want to continue on that. Maybe you want to summarize some of our past episodes, maybe, and then before we lead into today. We've talked a lot about self-confidence, but it'd be good for an update for some of the listeners.
Yes, actually, I'm going to go there because, as you remember in our last episode, this is the Boost Your Self-Confidence series. So we were talking about this virtuous circle on how doing hard things boosts your self-confidence. That was our last episode. Our first episode on this series was talking a little bit about what is self-confidence and how self-confidence can be different from self-esteem, right? Then last episode was about doing hard things and how doing hard things boosts your self-confidence.
I think you had some homework, right? You had some Did you have some homework for?
We also mentioned last week that there were 3 reasons why self-confidence leads to success, right? The first one gives you the drive to start things and doing hard things.
Yeah.
The second thing that we mentioned was that it gives you the ability to say yes or say no, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And the third one, we said it gives you the ability to stand up for yourself. So today we're going to be talking about how having self-confidence gives you the ability to say no and to say yes. And yes, you're not going to let me off the hook. So I have some homework for last week. Remember that in our last episode, I had committed to walk my talk and do one hard thing. So something I've been wanting to do for a long time, but I've been putting off. And for me, it was going to the pool at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, right? Because something I love, something that makes me just feel better, great way to start my day. But I haven't been having a hard time doing it consistently, especially in the Canadian winter. So I did walk my talk.
Well, it's tough though, because if it is cold out and your hair's wet, there's probably so many factors that go through your head that keep you from not going, right? There's probably so many you ruminate. I had one of the psychologists on my podcast, and he talked about rumination, right? You ruminate and you prevent you from doing it, but you have Mel Robbins tells you how to get over that.
Yeah, I use the 5-second rule, and it was just, I think the day after we finished the podcast, I was like, oh my God. I did promise in the last podcast that I was going to wake up to do this, and it's so hard. But I felt it was great exercise because I felt that since I had committed here publicly, after talking about doing hard things, I really had to walk my talk. So I did the 5-second rule, jump off the bed. I think for me, that's the hardest part, right? Because you're warm in your bed and it's minus 20 outside.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So I did it.
Okay. So you go, how long is it? So you got to get up, you go, how long is that whole process? Like, think of it from the time you get up.
It's not long because my trick is that I leave everything ready the night before.
Okay.
Right. So my bag is there. My swimming bag is there. My bottled water is there. My clothes are there. My swimming suit is there. Everything is just there.
Yeah.
So 5-second rule: get up, get changed.
So that prelim though, that preliminary is already preparing your mind, accepting it. Because if you hadn't done that 5 seconds would turn to the laborious task of going through.
I will never make it. Because I'm half asleep, right? When I wake up. So if I get everything ready, it's just very, very mechanical. Just go through the motions and just get ready, get everything done, out the door. It still is hard, right? Because it's cold outside.
You got wet hair. You got to think, do I put a hat on? Do I not come out with wet hair? Do I get sick?
Otherwise it will freeze. So I just very careful on how I bundle my hair when I come out.
With your long hair, you can make some pretty cool ponytails sticking out. That would be fun. Dr. Vee, is there a problem with your hair today? No, I was just swimming. It's like...
Yes. So I did it. I did it. So I will also be curious if any of our listeners today did the one hard thing. I would love to hear about it.
I
So
wish
send
we
me
could
a
do a
message in
poll. It'd be
LinkedIn.
great. You know, if we do, we should sometime we should think about how we can do a live feed where we do a live feed and you can create polls and questions, because that would be
That'll
we
be
could do that.
great.
Yeah, we do a live feed on LinkedIn or on Facebook or something. But and then you could post those questions and then they respond to you. But I'll give you for me, my one hard thing. I hadn't spoken to. I'll just keep it anonymous. But it was literally a friend of mine I hadn't spoken to in a while because my wife's like, they wanted for dinner, and I'm like, well, I don't know. It's kind of awkward, and because it was going to be a group of people come in, I'm like, so I just picked up the phone and called, and it was one of those things. Like it wasn't that hard. We just joked, and then
So
it was.
what did you do? The 5-second rule? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Call him.
It was almost like that because I thought I was just driving, and I said I'll just do it, and it's like it's so easy. It's kind of like, again, I've had podcasts with some of the clinical psychologists over at Danny McMillan and the Shared Psychology team. He said, those hard things you boil it in your head if you have an argument. And there's more in your head. The actual result is kind of like how do you you build it up in your head how it's going to be, and in reality it's not that difficult having that conversation. So that wasn't that hard, but just when 3 months passed by and it's like, I don't know, what do I say, kind of thing, right? So
right. And for me, it's like the swimming I've been doing twice a week. I know to do, and that's enough. That's enough for me. That's the way I like to do it. But it essentially gets to a routine, right?
Then it says like you miss it, right? It's kind of like I used to have a T-shirt. Someone got me a T-shirt. I used to run a lot when I was university, and after that, not run like religiously, but I worked at Gord's running store, and and it was at a T-shirt. Someone got me a T-shirt. A day without running pretty much sucks, and it made me think: did I miss a day of running? Did I? I was always thinking. About when did I get a run in today? And I know so many people, my daughter's like that. People, it consumes you, like, oh, you got to work out, it's whatever it is. So I think hats off to Dr. Vee.
Doing it, right? So let's do it. And I love the idea of maybe getting some listeners in live here and just do some coaching on the spot, like some laser coaching.
What are your issues? What issues you're facing?
Yeah.
That's what. See, this is that Gary Vee. So Dr. Vee, there is Gary Vee, Dr. Gary Vaynerchuk, right? And he used to have I think he still has it, the Ask Gary Vee, and people call in, and it's literally, what issues are you facing, or what but that's the beauty of it. If you can do it on the spot, if you can coach, not like a pre-programmed thing, but it's like, hey, what's on what issues you're dealing with? I mean, people have these Ask Me Anything. I don't think Ask Me Anything is, it's really, I don't know. To me, it's not anything. If it's not my expertise, I'm going to tell you, well, I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like, but if it's pretty much around your expertise.
Yeah. So we're talking about self-esteem, right? Somebody has issues with self-esteem, is struggling to do hard things just because it's just like very difficult for them, or is struggling with saying no, which is what we're going to be talking today. Just reach out to me or to Allan in LinkedIn, and we can just set something up.
So before we dive in more to the saying no or yes, do you have any examples of your clients or anybody you've worked with recently who talked to you about doing that hard thing, and where they got motivated? We do it
all the time. Like when you're doing coaching, doing hard things is the whole point that people are working with me. Because if it wasn't a hard thing, they will be doing it on their own. Right? So whatever it is, it's just hard for them. Yeah. So we just have to create a strategy, and that's what we will be doing if we do this laser coaching, this hot seat, is people come up with, this is hard for me. Let's create a quick strategy, a very practical, quick strategy that you can apply tomorrow and start changing your life.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. We just put the invite out, and people I talk to say, hey, Dr. Vee probably has some ideas around that. Let's get on and jam the hard talk. BBC has a series called Hard Talk. Yeah. It's going to be with Dr. Vee, Hard Talk. So so I know you have a lot to talk about today, and you want to make sure we can give you that the podium or the platform or the microphone.
Perfect. So, today let's talk about why self-confidence gives you the ability to say no and to say yes. So if you have trouble saying no, this episode is for you. because it happens to all of us, right? Sometimes it's a pattern we do all the time. Others it's a pattern that we do only with certain people or in certain situations. The problem is that when you always say yes to everything, you can easily become overwhelmed and build resentment against the people you are doing things for.
Right.
Right.
It's
So that's
funny. You say, I just, you took me back to my time when I was working in Kazakhstan, and I was an audit partner with Deloitte, and then people say, you know, we'd sit around we'd have weekly meetings and new assignments or new assignments that are whatever it was lagging, and they say, let's give it to this person. Oh no, that person has too much on their plate. But the philosophy was give it to the person who's the busiest, they'll get it done.
right.
It's not that they don't say no. I think they don't say that they just know how to be organized. They're just versus, well, that person's idle. Yeah, but they'll never get it done. Right. So it's funny that you say that, because they don't say no. They say yes to everything because they just if someone's super organized, that also can play out really well. I'm just the confidence.
Yes, like I'm yes, I hear I'm talking. We will go a little bit more into
Yeah.
that, but we're not talking about the. If you are, it's when you really can't do it, don't want to do
I
it,
understand. I
right? Like
understand.
it's so is being organized. That this is something we're going to talk in a little in a moment, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you really are saying everything, because you don't even know. Maybe even those persons who are very organized might seem very organized at work. Maybe they don't have a personal life, or maybe they can exercise because they have so much on their plate,
Sure.
right? So it's like,
Sure.
is this work-life balance that you have to look into that? So it's like you have to walk a mile in their shoes. So this is a general advice for people who think that they're taking
You're
on too
right.
much.
If they don't have the self-confidence to say no, and they're saying yes to everything, they're just taking on more and more, and that becomes a not self-fulfilling. It can be very detrimental, I imagine, too.
Yes, it can be, right? So
Yeah.
for those who have this behavior, saying no probably makes them feel guilty, anxious, or afraid of disappointing someone, right? But saying no is not the problem. In fact, it's often the solution.
Sure.
So we're going to be talking about that today.
You know,
So,
oh,
no,
sorry,
go
Doctor.
ahead.
I was just going to say again. It seems to me with some of your work, and I don't know, do you work with clinical psychologists or the mental health? Because some of the issues you mentioned, if the health is suffering, or they're not getting physical activity, and that's overwhelming, that can be depressing to some. It can be it can lead to other issues, mental health issues or health issues. Do you work with that, or do
No, I
you?
do not work with that, and that's my disclaimer here. Like this is,
Sure.
if you have clinical depression, if this is
Yeah.
affecting you to level of getting like anxiety, clinical anxiety,
Yeah.
then it's not with me. You'll have to look for medical advice, specialist advice. This is for people who just feel sometimes they're just overwhelmed, right? I guess, or just feeling guilty, or just feeling that they have to do things that they really don't want to do.
Yeah. Okay.
And they are building resentment. But if you are on the verge of anxiety or a depression that is medical, please just go and
Seek
consult with a
advice.
professional. Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you continue. Sorry to bring that
No,
up.
no, that's good. That's good. It's good just to make that clarification, right? Because people can be in different situations. So this topic relates very closely to people pleasing, but I will not talk about that today. But if you want to learn more about people pleasing behaviors, my LinkedIn profile, there's a series of 5 videos on people pleasing, right? So that will be helpful. But today we're going to be talking about how to say no. Mostly because saying yes to everything can be exhausting. And people pleasing, having a hard time to say no, lack of assertiveness, lack of self-confidence, those are a lot of reasons that people reach out to me in my coaching practice. That's what I wanted to talk about this. But you know what? Most of the time, the difficulty to say no is just the tip of the iceberg. Deep down, there's the desire to make others happy, self-worth issues, low self-esteem, low self-confidence, or the need to feel accepted.
You know, it's funny, the people pleasing. I was reading the, the sort of when goal setting. I don't know if it was discussion that you and I had, and actually it was probably with Daniel McMillan. He said even very successful people, once they reach a goal, or it's that what's the next. It's goal setting. And it was something that related to society, the looking for those indicate society's approval, I guess, as it were, high achievers even need that assistance, like even they, and I'm just going back to my discussions with the folks at the Shared Psychology, and literally that's it. Like they're constantly trying to please people, even when you're highly successful people.
Yes, this people pleasing is across the board, right? So that's why I created. I did a poll with my connections in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And the topic that a lot of people wanted me to talk about was people pleasing. That's why I created those series. There's
Nice.
there's 5 videos there. They're short videos where you can get very practical advice on how to stop people pleasing.
So that's on your profile, because I'll put that in the episode notes.
That's
I'll
on
put
my
a link
profile.
to that.
That's on my profile.
Okay.
You can see every week I release a new video.
Yeah.
So those are in my profile. It's called
Perfect.
Stop People Pleasing series.
Good.
They're short videos, like 2 minutes, but
I'll put a link in the episode notes for the benefit of the listeners.
Okay. Yes. So sometimes, having trouble to say no and agreeing to do things that we don't really want to do happens because we just what you were saying, right? We worry that others won't like you, won't like us. If we say no, if we disagree, or if we express a different opinion, we're afraid that people are not going to like us. So if you just can't say no, or you feel guilty when you tell people no, you probably also feel good about being the dependable go-to person who can fix everything and make people always feel better.
That is if you think about it, people come to you, it's almost self-fulfilling. It helps motivate people as well if people are coming to them for solutions. And I'll just give you the example of when I read in the book of Joy of Stress a few years back, and it said that people in Georgia, in the country of Georgia, the elderly were they sought upon for their wisdom and their expertise and their knowledge. So they lived longer, healthier. They lived longer lives because they had that healthy level of stress. So
yes.
I wanted to ask you about that.
I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about here about being kind to others, right? Yeah. I'm talking about saying yes all the time, mostly because you cannot say no.
Yeah.
Right? When it's almost like there's this fear that is preventing you to say no, even when you don't want to. And you don't want to say, you want to do something, and you still say yes, and you still go for it, right? And do it just because you don't want to disappoint another person. So that is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when this behavior of saying no, of not being able to say no, is feeding your identity and your self-worth. Yeah. Right? You're feeding your identity, you're feeding your self-worth from doing things for others. That's a problem. If you are doing it because you want to help and you have the time, and you are not doing it at expense of your self-care, of your health, of your emotional and mental health, then it's good. Yeah. Physical health, right? Then it's good. Then it's kindness, is wanting to help others. But when you're doing at expense of yourself, then that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a difference. So thank you for that distinction, because I understand that. So where people, they need that, they're afraid to say no. And I'll give you a quick example. There was a guy who had a truck, and everybody, when we were in university, and everyone used him for the truck to help them move, and he never said no, right? And I don't think he had the confidence, and maybe because nobody hung around with him outside of that.
Right, exactly, right.
So there was one guy, I think that's a good example. I'm not to pick on, but that's exactly what people do.
Yeah, he was fitting his identity and his self-worth from moving people.
Yeah.
Because
people never called him to come out, socialize after. Yeah.
Right. And then deep down, he had the feeling of the knowledge, in this case, because it was proved, right, that nobody would call him, that his worth, or people only wanted him because of his truck, which is very sad when you look at that.
It is.
And but it's
but that's the difference between someone sort of doing it because they're happy and they're getting the emotional stress, or they're getting
because you're getting from doing things, right? And it's and again, it's all about finding balance.
So what would you say? So, okay, let's say we have an example of that, and, let's role play quickly here then, Dr. V. Mm-hmm. Dr. V, everybody, I have this feeling The only reason they call me is because I own a truck, and they never invite me out. I don't know what to do. I gotta stop. I don't know what to do, Dr.
You know
V.
what I will tell this person? Keep on listening because we're gonna get to there in a minute.
Okay.
So I just want to have a lot of clarity on what this is and what are we referring to, right? Like, and I also want people to make the connection between the inability to say no and the lack of self-confidence. Right? Because you might try to please others because you have this need of external validation, because you're doing these things because you feel that you will have the approval and the acceptance, right? And that's why self-confidence gives you the ability to say no, but also to say yes. Right. So it's and just to your point, well, it is wonderful to be a giving and caring person. It is also very important to honor and tend to your own needs.
You know, it goes back to the podcast. When I started the podcast, right? I pretty much wanted to say yes to anybody. And, you know, and after 400 episodes, I don't just say yes to anybody, because I've had invites from across places that are irrelevant. And I try to help the listeners, right? I try to make it relevant. So I'm able to say no much easier than I did in the first few hundred.
Right.
And maybe I did, but I lacked the self-confidence because I didn't have enough. I wanted the content. I wanted the dialogue.
The content, right?
And I think that's when someone starts something new, and I've heard this term, and maybe you've heard this as well, imposter syndrome. I don't say no because I want to create this sense that I am doing something valuable. And so maybe there's that imposter syndrome at some point for some people, not saying no.
There's other videos on imposter syndrome in my YouTube channel. I'll give you the links for that too.
Yeah.
But just going back to this topic, you know what is behind this not inability to say no? A lot of fear.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fear. This fear of disappointing others, fear of being rejected, anger, having arguments, right? People being angry at you. And these can lead to internalized shame, guilt, resentment. And you know what? Eventually that resentment just builds up, and then you lash out. Or you can act in passive aggressive ways because that enough is enough, right? Like, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. That's it, you're done. Right? I'm thinking of the guy that was moving. There was a point he says, like, that's it, I'm done. I'm not moving anyone else.
My truck broke down. My truck broke down. I can't. Blame it on the truck, right? You don't have to take it personal blame. You just blame it on the truck. But as soon as that truck breaks down, everything else breaks down. That whole social inclusion or the validation, right? There's the validation right there. Oh, okay, right. But but that's the reality, is that people go through that everywhere, right? That rejection or social rejection.
It's hard, right? Because we're social beings, and then you don't want to be rejected.
Yeah.
You don't want to be rejected. You don't want people to be angry at you. You want to be accepted. That's part of who we are. We're social beings. So it's really hard. But sometimes you don't have to put that over your health, over your self-care.
Right.
That's example that everybody says everywhere, but it's so true. Like, put your mask first, right? When you're on the plane. You put your mask first, and then you put the mask of the person beside you.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, if there's an emergency,
you have to do it first in emergency situations on a plane.
Yeah, the oxygen mask comes down. That's right.
Always put your mask first. And this is a little bit like that, right? Always said yes to you first, and then if you can, then do it for others.
But that's to help, so you can help them, so you're not suffocating and trying to help someone else. You get yourself set, and then you can help them in a more clear mind. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but let's get into some solutions here. We already mentioned the effects of that.
Well, but first of all, I just remembered that unfortunately, poor Mexico got beat out and I know you're from Mexico in the World Cup, like Canada, but Mexico much stronger team than Canada, so in the World Cup. But I just want to. People are really, that's been a real big part of our because we lived in Qatar for 3 years. So
that's right.
And so it's just sort of this. We feel closer to it than that. Anyway, so I wanted to bring that up too.
That's right. Just want to.
I didn't want you to say no if I brought it up. So
yes, no, that's fine. I'm not super soccer fan, so I haven't really followed the World Cup. Don't judge me for that. But
I bet you if they won, if Mexico went to the next, they would have, you would have,
maybe
they would
I
have got
will
your
have been to the
attention. They would have,
final.
you would have
Maybe.
been, well, no, if they got to the next level, suddenly the interest comes from, this, oh, when the Raptors, we were living in Qatar when the Raptors won, right? Toronto Raptors won, and everyone was, everybody was, oh, you're from Canada, right? Did you know Toronto Raptors? It's like, it was, when people get elevated in their country, it becomes suddenly everyone knows that you're from that country. So anyway, okay.
Hey, so well, let's go into some solutions here, because you might be like, okay, Dr. V, yes, I do that. Now what?
Yeah.
Right? So, well, do you want to know what is the secret to stop saying yes to everything?
No. 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 Yes, I do. Yes, no. It's a trick question,
What
because if I
say?
say
Yeah,
no, you're gonna go, well, I'll tell you.
No, the secret is to stop saying yes to everything is to create awareness. Right? And to create awareness, you can start by identifying specific situations and people you tend to always say yes. Because I'm sure they are. Is this person that you can say no, this situation that when it's happening, you can't say no. So you have to first identify those ones, right? That's the first step to create awareness. And then you make a list of these people and the situations. Well, the most relevant at the top. And then you will be able to say no to similar situations in the future, because the fact that you're thinking about it and you're writing them down will help you to identify it next time it happens.
I'm telling you, you are on the cusp of some of the psychological, like the mental health discussions I've had. And this is sort of great awareness. Like when you're in, and I'm going back to with Dr. Daniel McMillan, he was just talking about if you get angry, you create awareness, but you identify, I'm angry. It's kind of like that simple thing. Well, I'm not saying you're giving mental health advice, but you're giving recommendations are very similar to dealing with other issues, dealing with issues of to create that awareness, being present, being current.
Yes. And mostly because what is the difference between therapy and coaching? Yeah. It's mostly that therapy focuses in the past, and coaching focuses in the present and in the future, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
Some of the tools are the same. So this is what is in the future. When you confront one of the situations, what do? You remember you have a list, you remember that you already identified the situation, and you're not going to get there, right? So you will say, also remember that when you're saying no, you don't need to give a lengthy explanation on the why you're saying no. Sure. No is a sentence on itself.
Well, just the other day, the fellow on LinkedIn, he reached out, and I'm happy to accept the LinkedIn request, and he was trying to sell me something. And I said, no, not interested. He writes back, I think he wrote that one personally, and he writes back, oh, can you tell me why? I says, no, I'm just not interested. And I'm like, this guy's very persistent. And then the next day, was it later, I get this another message saying, but it was a chatbot. I could tell, because in LinkedIn, my name is Allan R, right? In full caps. And because people put, and he goes, Allan R, again, can I ask you why? So the chatbot came in. I said, dude, I said no, but I know you're using the chatbot because my name is Allan, not Allan R. So, like the persistency there, it was easy for me. No, I'm not interested, but people are like, why? I don't need to explain. Yeah.
You don't have to explain, right? Like, so we have but let's get into a little bit more practical. Like, if there's something there that's someone else there that is still saying, hey, Dr. V, that sounds great in theory, but I still don't know how to say no. It's just so hard for me. Yeah. Let's get into some more practical tips on how to say no. So, but before I get into these steps, because I'm going to give you 5 steps to make it easier to say no with confidence. Before I get into that, I think it's important for people to learn, or for us to learn, right? When it's important for us and for our mental health to say no. Because there are certain situations that is very important to say no. And I just want people to be aware of those ones too. Awareness again, right? Like, you should say no if the request makes you feel uncomfortable, guilty, or obligated. You should say no if the request crosses your personal boundaries. And you should say no if you're just saying yes to please someone else. So with that in mind, if you're in one of the situations, here are 5 tips on how to say no. So the first one, and the easy one, is what we were just saying. Be clear. Don't beat around the bush. Just say no. No explanations, right? Like, just say no.
You know, it just reminds me, back in the day, I had a business up in Edmonton, and it was a sales business. I had a lot of salespeople, and there was we called it not interested. So people would easily say maybe, they would never say no, or yes. It was in between. They created this excuse that, oh my, it's literally, you can go through cycles. They didn't say no, but they didn't say yes. And it's called the maybe. It's the put off, to put you off for a future. So you will call back, follow up, right? So people, the pile of the not interested, we called it, was huge.
Right.
The no's were outright, flat out no, we're kind of small, and the yeses, they're about the same number. But the not interested, meaning, or if they didn't say not interested, they would put you off. Well, you call me back in September. Right now we've got summer vacations. You call September. September comes along, and the kids are back in school. The fall.
And just think about that example. Wouldn't it be just easier to say no? Just to be clear, right? And just say no, and then you just say all no. Those calls be coming up in September later.
When people are in sales mode, they don't pick those signals up, right? But the buying mode, so the person who's saying no isn't interested in whatever it is, the buying, in the case of a buying and selling or doing work or whatever. And that's even that person, if, as you mentioned earlier, the person who's saying yes is because they don't want to say no, or they feel uncomfortable with that saying no. So be clear, just say no.
Yes, to be clear, say no, right? The second one is start small. If saying no is really, really hard for you, just start small. Start by saying no to small requests. Oh, okay. Try not to volunteer your time, your energy, or your help automatically, right? Say, for example, if you have 2 people asking you for something, say yes to only one of them. Okay. And remember our mantra in this coaching corner: baby steps. So let's start there, right? So another.
I like that. I like it's almost, it's simple, but instead of having this gargantuan feeling obligated or really difficult to say no, find something small. It's almost like a quick win.
Small, yeah, and say, maybe just say no half of the time, right? To half of the requests that you have in a day. But maybe that's the way to start, because you have to start feeling comfortable by saying no, right? And the only way you can do it is practice. It ties to our last episode.
This reminds me
about doing hard things.
When you're reading the book, the professor, remember you mentioned you had to read out loud?
Yes.
And it was like that baby, it started with baby steps.
It's always baby steps.
The foundations, right?
Change is always baby steps, like you can go cold turkey and it might work, but it's mostly better just to do very steady baby steps.
Yeah.
So another tip is have some statements prepared. If remember your list. If you have that list, you're meeting with this person that's on your list because you cannot say no to that person. Well, then prepared. Have some statements there. Something along the lines of, thanks for thinking of me. Thanks for thinking of me. However, I will not be able to. Or, I understand this event is important to you. However, I made other plans and I can't attend.
We used to love it. I mean, we used to have the expressions when you got rejected for job applications, right? So the other side is saying no, but it's called the please get lost, or in its expletives. But depends on how the letter was. You would have all these different ones. It was just a nice letter, and then this letter was, depends on how many you get. But we had fun with it. It was, this what kind of letters you get? Oh, it was basically direct and. Right. Just get lost.
And you always appreciate when it's polite, right? When it's kind, when it's a kind response. So that's what I'm saying here. Prepare those
it's helpful, statements. Yeah, it's helpful. So you can almost copy and paste, or you have it in your mind, your mental.
Have it in your mind, have it a list if you need to write them down, right? Like it's so just be prepared. Yeah. And then a fourth tip will be, sometimes you need to delay your response. That's the reality, right? Sometimes although saying no is very important, it can also be quite difficult. So if you have trouble saying no to things you don't want to do, you can delay your response. You
Yeah,
could
but
say some.
that's the, oh, call me back in the new year. New year rolls along.
Yeah, you can say something like, let me check my schedule and I will get back to you with an answer tomorrow. Right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're unsure, like you just say that, let me get back to you tomorrow, later in a week. Always put a time frame, right? So people knows, the person knows. And because delaying your responses will give you the time to make a more informed decision. You can then carefully consider the request, consider if this is something that you really want to do, if it's worth your time and your effort.
Yeah.
You can also listen to your inner self. I talk about that quite a bit here too, where you're like, do I really want to do this? And you'll know, right? Like you'll have that response of like, or I'm just doing this because I have to do it, or I feel that I have to do it. Is it like I want to do this, or I should do this?
I think the delay response, and for many things it can do, it'll just really make you think versus,
Yes, it gives you the space.
spontaneous. If you're too spontaneous, you might have said in the past, you might have said yes to those things because you didn't have this tool, but now you're thinking, but this goes back to your lists, or maybe you have two requests. You can compare and contrast and say,
you can compare. And you know what? It will stop your automatic yes response.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Right? It was
Yes, Doctor. Yes, Dr. Vee.
Because you'll have time to think about what you're really committing to.
This could work. Some of this stuff could work in a sort of a interview. And I'm just thinking, when you're in an interview and you're asked the questions and you watch it on Good Question, you listen to, say, Shark Tank or whatever, they think about it first versus, good question. Let me think about that versus trying to blurt something out quickly. That delay gives you time to think about how you want to respond. And I think that works in other areas as well.
And that's fair, right? It's fair to be clear. It's fair to say, I don't have an answer just now.
Yes.
Let me think about it. And so then the last tip in here is remember that assertiveness is key. And let me talk a little bit about assertiveness here, because people misunderstand in many cases assertiveness. To be assertive doesn't mean to be aggressive. It means standing for yourself in a way, in a calm and positive way.
Right.
Right? It's important to be empathic, to understand the other person's feelings and their point of view. You can respond by using assertiveness. You can respond in a way that it acknowledges the other person's situations or feelings. And then once you acknowledge that, you can follow it by a statement in which you stand up for yourself and what you need.
So do you have an example of where you would think of the difference between aggression and assertiveness in this case? And I'm do you have an example of how you could say that?
Yeah, those examples that I was just saying before, right? Like, I appreciate you inviting me, but I won't be able to attend, or I understand this event is important for you, but I have made other plans. Right? Like even this thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah.
But I won't be able to do this, right? And we are going to talk in the next episode more about standing up for yourself, because that's the topic in the next episode. But I just wanted to mention that you have to be assertive, and assertiveness doesn't mean aggressiveness. You can.
That's part of confidence, right? To be assertive, you have to have the confidence to be assertive, right? Back to the truck scenario. No, my truck is burned down. My truck burned down.
That's passive aggressiveness, right? Because you want to do it. So and that's what you get in when you are fed up of saying yes to everything, because you're tired, because you're exhausted, because you're angry, because resentment is building up. And then what you are either aggressive, openly aggressive, or just passive aggressive, whatever is your style, right? So it'll show up there. But next episode, we're going to talk more about assertiveness. But just for now, just know that you can be assertive and you can be polite. You can be assertive and you can be kind. It's not one or the other, right? So it's just expressing what you want to say in a very calm and positive way, while still standing up for yourself and your needs and your wants. So
so those are 5 tips.
Those are 5
very
tips.
good tips. And as I said, I think these can apply in a lot. From what I'm listening, how I'm hearing,
Mhm.
this can apply in a lot of areas. Probably dealing
And
with children, dealing with your
right.
boss, dealing with your, people you work with.
Especially in the holidays, because the holidays are coming up, you're going to use this a lot, right? Because sometimes it gets hard at work when you have so many commitments with your family. It gets hard with your family. Sometimes when you don't see them so often, you're trying to organize the perfect Christmas or the perfect holiday celebration or whatever it is, right?
Sure,
It just can
sure.
get hard. So the last point I want to talk about here, because it's very important, you already touched on it, but it's very important, is as much as we have to normalize saying no, we also have to normalize hearing no. Right? Because I would like to talk a little bit about hearing no without overreacting or getting upset.
So you're talking about the recipient, when the recipient
Yes.
of the
Yes.
rejection comes in.
It is important to be comfortable when with hearing no, right? And not to take it personally. Because remember that healthy boundaries include not compromising your values and beliefs to please others, saying no when it's appropriate, and also accepting hearing no from others.
Oh, right. Right.
Right? So if you struggle to say no, it might be because you don't like hearing no either. Right? So think about it the other way around. For example, when you say no to someone,
How do they
their
feel?
reaction tells you everything about their level of respect towards you. Because if somebody doesn't like your no and they want to push you beyond it, chances are that they don't respect you.
Right.
And I think this is very important for young adults, teenagers to know, right? Like it's this boundary where people should respect your no. People should be comfortable hearing no. And if they push you to, beyond that no, it's because
Right.
they probably don't respect you. So you have to be careful with that type of people.
Wow.
And it's also,
It is. I love how you say that. It's that they probably don't respect you, and that's the same as you. If you take rejection high, or if you the other side of it, if you get a no, and you take it, if your reaction is more or less too high or too low, right? I
right.
think it's finding that even keel.
No, exactly. It's important to reflect on how you manage hearing no from others, right? Like maybe you handle it very well, or maybe you need more practice tolerating uncomfortable emotions that may come up. I'd love to hear your insights, right? Like I'd love to hear insights of people about this, normalizing saying no and normalizing hearing no.
Yeah.
Because and just to finish this conversation today, I just want to say that saying no to some of the things that you really don't want to do enables you to devote the time to the things that are really important for you. Right? That comes with, remember at the beginning I said self-confidence gives you the ability to say no, but also to say yes. Because
Yes.
when you're able to say no, your yeses become more meaningful.
It just reminded me there was a yes and no game on the Dubai Eye radio, and he was so the kids would play it on. The kids we'd listen, see if because they would trick you. You're not allowed to say yes, right? The yes or no game. I gotta remember the whole. So if you say yes, they would trick you. What's your name, John, Mary? Like they go
Yes,
through,
I remember that
right?
one.
And then they would hit you with a question that just instinctively people would say yes.
Automatically, yeah.
You could hear, right? They would lose. They would lose because they said yes. And so my daughter was on it once. We were driving from the drive from school, and she won. And but you have to pause
Right.
before if you don't take that time to pause, and it was like 20 seconds or whatever they played out questions. It was actually funny, that yes or no game. Maybe that's a question game you can play with your clients.
Yeah, I would like to hear, right? What are some of the things that our listeners can say, like if I say no to this, I will be able to say yes to this other thing that I really want to do.
Yeah.
Right. So and I just want to conclude with this, if you don't learn to say no, there will be no space in your life when a powerful yes appears.
Yeah. That's powerful.
Right. So and remember, if you need other resources on saying no, I do have I've created a checklist that you can download on my
Please, let's
website.
have that in the list. Yeah.
And
So
you can just go and get some other practical steps on how you can stop saying yes to everything.
Well, Dr. V, it's been a good session. It's in, for me, this is that area. It's constantly, people are always, I think it starts at an early age, right?
Mm.
When you're, if you think no, or yes, depending on and so as you get old, you're conditioned to doing one way or the other. I think that conditioning, it's hard to change that. And I think these are some very important steps that people can use, not only in their personal life, but also, I believe, in their work and other interactions. So thank you for today. Any last words? I don't want to be the last words. I want Dr. V to give the final word. Do you have a challenge? Do you have a challenge for anyone?
I have a challenge for this week. Well, yeah, just let's look for let's identify one situation where we just say yes all the time and just try to say no at least once this next week. Okay. Or during the weeks that until we meet again for this. Just at least one.
Good. And try to change that. Well, Dr. V, this has been great. We're very close to Christmas.
Thank you. Yes.
You know, for a lot of folks out there that may or may not celebrate Christmas, but I do have some decorations behind me. And
I do try to have some decoration behind me that they were dismissed by you already, so I won't even count them.
Well, it's a plant, trying to plant. It's harder with a plant and decorating a plant, but people do that. So anyway, if we don't see, I'm sure you'll have a good Christmas, but we will definitely talk in the coming weeks.
Sounds good. Thank you, Allan.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.